the fact that they've been there 5-6 years now and still renting, they are now buying.
I think we are not far away from seeing the first billion dirham property come to the market. Hello, team. Welcome back to our podcast, videocast, depending on how you are streaming this. We are the Two Fat Brokers. I am Barney from Dubai.
Ben from Abu Dhabi.
And today we have broken out the finest bone china for this podcast. Also, we are going to talk about the influx of European buyers into the UAE. Now, I think we can comfortably say that we're probably getting more clients, buyers moving to Dubai than possibly in Abu Dhabi.
Who were your buyers before the European?
I mean, the Indians have always been strong. There was a few Europeans. Obviously, there was the influx of Russian buyers and Ukrainian buyers that came. You know, a lot of people from the local regions.
So you're talking about Western Europe, talking about European buyers.
Yes. Yeah. Western Europe. The sort
Seeing more Brits, Spanish, Italians, Germans,
Brits, French, a lot of French. Some of the northern European countries like Sweden, Denmark. Actually had a interesting coffee with a chap the other day who lived in Stockholm, and Stockholm, notoriously safe city, and realized that he was being followed by the same car every time he left his house. His house is behind a security gate, and every time he would leave, the same car would follow him. Obviously not very good at following people, but it was after he was followed 3 times into the center of Stockholm in his Ferrari and then drove home, the same car was behind him. It was at that point he decided he was leaving Stockholm to come to Dubai because he realized Stockholm wasn't as safe as it used to be. And that is one of Europe's safest cities.
But he thought it wasn't safe because someone was tailing him. Maybe he's cheating on his wife and it's a private investigator.
I don't know if he was married or not. Maybe a real enthusiast. A little creepy though.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we are seeing the rise of the UAE going hand in hand with what I would call the demise of the European Union. Could I go that far? Could I say that?
Nice.
Oof, our
Is it because the UK's
our sisters
out?
are going to kill us. Our sisters are going to kill us. Look, there's no denying the fact that Western Europe just had to do the northeast.
Never eat soggy Weetabix.
Never eat soggy Weetabix. I did that. There's no denying that these countries are going through unprecedented amounts of stress from their economies, from their security, from the general standard of living. Everything is being squashed in those countries, along with, some people would argue, their freedom of speech and their liberties. But we'll not go too far down that rabbit hole today. And so many of the wealthy and middle class are all moving. And where have they chosen to move to? These sunny shores.
And why do you think they're moving to the UAE? Away from, let's say, UK, France, Germany?
Well, they're the countries that are struggling. So you don't want to go out of the frying pan and into the fire. Look, there is a newspaper article that was sent to me the other day saying that the UK is set to lose 5,500 millionaires in the next 5 years, and they are all headed this way. I don't know where someone gets that kind of information from. Do you do straw polls with the millionaires? Are you a millionaire? Yes. Are you planning on leaving soon? Yes. Okay, done.
I mean, UK is a great example, right? So election season coming up now. It's probably more divided. English people love to be miserable, but you just seem to have unrelenting kind of negativity about the UK coming out recently, particularly over the last few years. Brexit being a catalyst, but also, people struggling with immigration, coming to terms with that and the way that it's done, and this, Reform Party, UKIP, all of these kind of fringe parties, rising to prominence. And actually, in the European Union elections recently, far right had massive gains, and Marine Le Pen looks like she's going to be a real front runner in the new French election.
And she's very far right.
A lurch, a lurch right, which you'd actually think be good for millionaires because millionaires love a good right-wing government. But actually, in the UK, it's going to be a lurch left probably, but the lurch right mainly due to immigration as opposed to. And then European growth has been sluggish. When you look at it, the US, 3 and 4% growth looks great. UAE, the economy has been growing very quickly.
4%, but 4.3.
Yeah, Europe has stagnated. So perhaps business people are seeing that there's more room to do business here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that businesses are now do not have to be owned in part or at all by a local sponsor, which was a rule that was abolished a few years ago, has certainly opened its doors. There's no denying geographically that the UAE is perfectly positioned for you to be able to do business anywhere in the world. But I also think, and this is probably me falling into something of a surface level person, but I believe if you have worked your whole life to afford a certain standard of living and drive a certain car, wear a certain watch, all of these Lauren Piana shoes, if you wear Lauren Piana shoes in London, you'd probably have them on your feet for about 20 minutes before some fella taps you on the shoulders and goes, "Nice shoes, can I have them?" It's a fact.
Your average thug knows what Lauren Piana is because I've actually never.
Well,
heard
it's
of
very much.
You mentioned it
very
now,
mate. You and sartorial elegance do not go hand in hand.
Are
it's
those piano shoes.
Is it because they're black and white? It's a fact. And I think if you have been successful enough to be able to earn the trappings of your success, you should be able to wear them, drive them, live in them, without fear of extreme jealousy and ultimately crime, which is what it is. And this is a conversation I've had with several of my clients who've come over from Europe is I want to be able to wear my Patek Philippe. I want to be able to drive my car. My wife wants to be able to carry her Birkin around without worrying about being robbed. And this is the safest city in the world, or one of them. Safest country in the world, or one of them.
Yeah, I wonder, I imagine rich people fear crime far more than it ever happens to them. Poor people are actually
criminals.
Of crime.
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
Poor people are actually the victims of crime, but rich people worry about it far more, I guess. And so, yeah, if that's something that you're worried about, don't lock our houses and cars in Abu Dhabi. I know in Dubai there's been some robberies and stuff like that, so maybe you guys are a little bit more cautious. But
have there?
Yeah, you get like criminal gangs.
Do we?
And every now and again, see it in the news.
But anyway, they're usually the ones that are picked up at the airport on transit. Anyway, this could be
come in on a month visa and do a bit of crime.
We're so good. We're so hot for tourism. We even get criminal tourists.
There you go.
So look,
but you're seeing in the area that you work in, and talk about the whys and the wherefores. You're seeing more Western Europeans come to Dubai to buy property.
Yes, and their lean actually coincides really nicely with the increase in well-renovated properties. If you are moving to a country that you are not au fait with, that you don't have roots in, you do not want to really be moving to a property where you then have to start doing work. It's just probably not in your remit. And again, going back to what we said in a previous podcast, wealthy people's most precious asset is their time. And they do not want to have to move to a new country, go through all of that rigmarole, and then have to renovate a house. So what we're seeing is this beautiful symbiotic rise in well-renovated properties, sating the desire from European buyers. And chicken and egg, what came first, the well-renovated properties or the European buyers? I don't know. But it seems like, that the developers are now sating a need and are getting the financial rewards from spending that little bit of extra money on their renovations to bring them up to a standard that specific European buyers would appreciate.
Because the awkwardness about renovations and things like that has always been there's such a diverse number of buyers out there. And we're talking about Chinese, Indian, Arabic, European, and they all have a different style. How can you renovate something, that's going to appeal to all four classes, or do you not? Do you literally say, okay, we're targeting Europeans with this, or we're targeting Indians with this?
Sensible people would choose their demographic. And, I mean, one of the good things about one of the things that I learned when I was selling in London, that buy to renovate and sell for a profit, that model has been institutionalized in the UK. It is prevalent. It is everywhere. And all they do is whitewash the walls, cream carpet, and make everything inside as sort of beige and neutral as possible, because then it appeals to the biggest demographic in London.
Yeah.
Now, for you to be able to do something like that, European style largely is quite similar. They quite like sort of this comfortable modern aesthetic. But if you can keep it as neutral as possible, it requires less change to be brought to your color palette, your preference, right? But if you go all out, in your reds and your golds and your blacks and your blues, that's going to be a very big change. But if you can lean into the neutral color palette, it appeals to a broader spectrum of buyers. What we are seeing, incidentally, is we're seeing a lot of people who have jumped on this renovation bandwagon and not done the renovations that you would expect them to have done. And their properties are languishing on the market because people are coming in and they're saying, look, you're asking too much money. Yes, you probably get a premium, but if I move into this house, I have to redo everything that you've done because you didn't do it properly the first time. So
did it
they're
cheaply
almost
or not well?
Both. Both, one, the other, whatever. It needs to be done properly. It needs to be done with the right materials, and it needs to be done to the right standard. But if you've got the right materials and poor craftsmanship, those materials then become redundant. But if you get the wrong materials and the right craftsmanship, the wrong materials still shine through. You have to do both correctly. And unfortunately, these guys who have done the job badly, one of the other, those houses then almost become worth less than a standard one because it needs to be ripped out and done again anyway. And so I'm not paying you a premium for that. I'll pay you, whatever a standard one's going for.
I mean, so you obviously deal with the very top end of the market. Do you see the emergence of companies, renovation companies who are, focusing on that? Because, when you think of renovation, you think about, builders from the Indian subcontinent, and there's a foreman, and are there companies who are bringing in, real craftsmen, to do, incredibly, high-end woodwork and masonry work and things like that, maybe importing that kind of talent from elsewhere? Or do you still see,
I think the talent's
lowest
here.
common denominator?
No, the talent's here. I mean, a lot of the, marble laying and the finer intricacies of things. We're selling a house at the moment where the kitchen is from Austria, a small mum and pop kitchen manufacturers, but the cabinetry work inside was done by a company they call it Bombardier. I think it's Bombardier, but they make cabinetry for aircraft. So that kind of quality is now being brought here. And it was fitted by this mum and pop band. I mean, they're not a mum and pop, but they're a small artisanal kitchen manufacturer. But the MEP, the behind the scenes work, it doesn't need hugely skilled labor. But a lot of the labor is already here. You just need to have the right person managing them. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can bring in, your marble workers from Italy. You can bring in your kitchen workers from Germany. You don't necessarily need to.
So
you just need to have the right project manager.
Well, okay, but you'd see entirely different companies working on these 50 million dirham.
Yes.
Villas that would work on, let's say, a 5 million dirham villa. Is it very different, or?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's definitely, you were right, there's definitely been a rise of businesses or development companies who will buy and renovate properties. One of them springs to mind, and they've done a lot of business on the Palm, and that was their sole mandate. We will You give us the house, we will renovate it, and we will renovate it sensitively enough for you to be able to sell it for a good profit. And they've done amazing work. They've struggled a bit recently, but they've done amazing work. And they were the go-to company on the Palm Jumeirah, and they've made people a lot of money. There was still space for other companies, and there still is space. But again, a friend of mine, a guy called Wissam, owns a company called Palace Contracting. Now, he won't touch anything that's a renovation job. He will only build palaces, very high-end homes.
Does exactly what
scratch.
It says on the tin, huh?
Yeah. So, anyway, I digress. Yes, there is a rise of companies that will do fit-outs for you just to make a profit. And there's a raft of buyers who are buying just to take advantage of that.
And so when you say, okay, more Europeans buying, so actually when we talk about it in Abu Dhabi, we're seeing a lot more end users buying, which is something that we struggle with for a long time. And a lot of those end users are Europeans, people who've lived in Abu Dhabi for a long time. They never bought because the market, was on the slide basically since 2015. And now those people, through, golden visas, through job security, through the fact that they've been there 5-6 years now and still renting, they are now buying. We're not seeing the influx, of obviously definitely not, of the very, very high-end European buyers. Although the ADGM is doing a good job of bringing in a lot of hedge funds and things like that. So we might see that a bit later.
ADGM?
Abu Dhabi Global Markets, our version of the DIFC, Dubai International Financial Centre. So we are seeing, more Western European buyers, but they're already in Abu Dhabi, and they are just deciding that it makes sense now for them to buy, whereas before, it didn't. But what
so
you're
it's
saying
retention
is
of individuals.
Yeah, because for a long time, people were nervous about buying a property here. Either they didn't think they were going to be here long enough, obviously worried they were going to lose their job through the pandemic, or they didn't want to buy a depreciating asset because the market's going down. And so what was sold, stayed in the hands. There wasn't much turnover. But now we're seeing much more of a drive amongst people to buy their own home because they realize they're here for longer.
So what kind of people are the ADGM attracting? Are they
Hedge
attracting
funds mostly,
which are predominantly US and Europe based?
Yeah,
right?
a lot of US and UK for now, but obviously there's quite a few in Singapore, and UAE is a nice kind of stop between London and Hong Kong, Singapore. There's not really sort of anything in this kind of area, and traditionally they've been in DIFC.
How long is the flight to Singapore from here? Still quite a long flight, right? 11 hours?
Yeah, I mean Singapore is just south of Thailand, so 6-7 hours, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Just roughly. Hong Kong's obviously a little bit further round, and so DFC's done a great job of that, so far. And ADGM is also attracting different kinds of hedge funds. A lot of them like wanting to work with the government, but also,
where would you say? Let's say you have a European buyer wanting to move to Abu Dhabi. Where would you recommend that they look?
I mean, if you're moving into the ADGM, there's only Saadiyat Island really.
Okay.
And that's like That's beautiful,
why Saadiyat Island.
Yeah,
there's no hardship to live there for sure.
Yeah, and it's very close to Marriott Island, and that's where we've seen like the biggest price spikes, mainly because they've been using ADGM as a business driver in Abu Dhabi. So we've seen massive price spikes in Saadiyat, Mamsha, and Saadiyat Beach Villas as well. And there's a new off-plan project called the Lagoons, which has also been selling very, very well.
So what's your commute time from Saadiyat to ADGM?
10 minutes.
Oof, I bet there's so many people in Europe who have just gone, how much? 10 minutes?
Yeah.
That's how long it takes me to get out of my suburb.
Yeah, it's very close. And once they sort out, there's a little U-turn you got to do. Once they sort that out and build the flyover onto Marriott Island, I mean...
7.5 minutes.
Maybe.
Ye gads, man.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, if I were to ask myself the same question, because I feel that question isn't coming from you, so I'm going to ask myself the same question. Anywhere in Dubai. The DIFC is closest to downtown. That sort of apartment living. You've got Jumeirah Bay, which obviously is slightly higher ticket values. They're sort of starting around 40 million euros, going all the way up to sort of 100 million euros, maybe even more. So it really kind of depends. But the great thing, I live in a community which is about 17 miles from DIFC, and it takes me 25 minutes to get there.
Miles? Who uses miles these days?
All right, 21 kilometers.
You know what? In Abu Dhabi, we had the most expensive unit ever sold.
150 million dirhams. No,
120 million dirhams.
I thought it was 150.
No,
they were asking 150.
There is one. There is one for 150. That was one.
I thought they sold both
so
of them.
that's 40 million euros.
Yes.
4 euros to the dirham.
Yeah.
No, 30 million. Yeah. So Abu Dhabi much cheaper than Dubai.
Yes, I mean houses here trade at 130 monthly. Monthly.
Yeah, we've never sold a villa for 130.
Yeah, I mean there's. I think we are not far away from seeing the first billion dirham property come to the market.
Really?
Not far.
What's the highest so far? 600 million?
600. That was 620, 675. I think it was. That was NTIP. On the Palm. Nobody knows who bought that. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of influx of European buyers, we are seeing a lot, and we are seeing it. It's never been more easy to set up companies in the UAE. It's phenomenal. So this is visas, 10-year visas.
So this is the next wave. So obviously, we probably had let's say. Arab, Indian expat, and then you had the wave of the Russians and Ukrainians. Now the next wave you think is the Western Europeans.
Yeah, I mean we've always been underpinned by the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, that kind of area. They've always been buying here. The market's largely been underpinned by local countries buying here and people moving here. But these are sort of these are a new wave for sure.
Okay, great.
I mean, in many respects, if you turn around and you ask yourself the question, if I don't feel safe in the country that I'm in, if I don't or can't afford the escalating living costs, if I don't appreciate the way my country's being run, where else in the world offers you what the UAE does?
Yeah, very few. I mean, traditionally, if we're talking about British people, you'd think about, Australia. You'd think about
too far.
You'd think about
Too many
Hong
spiders.
Kong. You'd think about
Too
Singapore.
Too humid.
But yeah, I mean, very clearly, the UAE is now front and center of people's minds when they're thinking about becoming expats.
Should I say it? Habibi, come to Dubai? No.
Habibi, come to Dubai?
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Is that a hashtag?
It's a thing. I don't know. You may have missed it. It's
okay.
a thing.
Habibti, come to Abu Dhabi.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I have been Barney from Dubai.
I've been Ben from Abu Dhabi.
We have been the Two Fat Brokers, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.